Morning, chickens.
Morning, turkeys. Hi everybody, welcome to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, we did the chores in the nick of time before there's sleet and snow and all kinds of crazy yucky weather headed our way today and actually the next couple of days.
Yeah, actually the next like 2.5 days are supposed to be just what they call here a wintry mix, which means our temperatures are supposed to be 1 or 2 degrees either side of freezing. So if it's just happens to be 33 degrees at the time, it'll be raining. If it dips down to 31, it'll start to freeze. And so it's just a crazy time where the roads could get really bad. We could get ice storms. We could get some snow, or we could just end up with a lot of rain. It's just a weird time of year here in the Ozarks.
Right. So today is a great time for us to sit down with you guys and talk about one thing that makes things go really smoothly for us.
Right. So every year about this time, or sometimes even a little earlier in the year, we sit down with a calendar and we've tried to plan out roughly what our entire year will look like as far as the homestead goes. Now, every year things, don't work out exactly as we had planned, but this gives us a good rough idea of how things should go for the rest of the year, and it allows us to plan other things, in our personal life and visitors coming and things much more smoothly.
So we've heard from a few of you asking us to do a video just like this, but because we talk a lot about how we plan, we talk a lot, we plan a lot, and we thought we'd bring this to you guys today to help you learn how to figure out what's going to work for you guys and your homestead planning.
Right. We hope that it will just give you some insight as to how our brains work, how we sit down and really figure out how one thing can affect another, and how we keep our whole, farm and family and everything running smoothly for the entire year.
And it hopefully will give you guys a great starting point.
So when we're planning out our year, we use a couple different things. We still use just a regular calendar that we can write on because that is probably the simplest thing to do. And then we try to also put as much of this information as we can into our computer, which then syncs with our phone, so it can give us, updates and reminders and things, and just kind of keeps us on track even better. But you need to figure out what system works best for you, the way that you, like to do things. Now, the first thing that we start with every year are the things that we know are kind of a fixed date. We'll take, for instance, I know that every year in November is rifle deer season here in the Ozarks. And I like to block that time off so that we're not scheduling other big things to happen during that 10-day window, so that I have plenty of time to go out and hunt. Hunting is a big thing here on the homestead. We rely on that for meat for the family. So we like to set that time aside so that I can do as much hunting as possible. Now that doesn't mean that nothing else happens during that time. It just means that we're not going to schedule things that will take up, the entire day or an entire week of our time. So this year in Missouri, deer rifle season will be from November 14th through the 24th. So we're going to mark that time off. So as we're planning other things, we see that on the calendar and we know that time needs to be set aside.
With that same topic of deer rifle season, has to do with the butcher that we have used to process pigs for customers. Last year we found out that the butcher we use doesn't do any pigs for 1 solid month before rifle season and 1 solid month after rifle season. So we need to keep that in mind when figuring out when we're going to raise our pigs. So we put that in our calendar.
Now the pigs that we raise for our family, we do the butchering ourselves. But the pigs that we sell to customers, we actually deliver to a processor. And that's what Sarah's talking about. That processor won't do pigs a month before or a month after deer rifle season because they set that entire time aside to just process deer for hunters.
Another thing we need to keep in mind, which will affect our planting season for our summer crops, is we like to attend the Baker Creek Spring Planting Festival in May. And that planting festival is the first Sunday and Monday in May. So we'll put that in our calendar so that we're not relying on those dates in whatever we have going on, which in our case will be planting.
Now the other thing that we know will take our time away from the homestead every week is the farmer's market. We sell at our local farmer's market every Saturday, starting the first weekend in April through the first weekend in October. So we actually block off every Saturday on our calendar, so we know those Saturdays are set aside just for the farmer's market.
Okay, that's all we're going to write down for today, but some things that you also should be thinking about are things you know are going to happen during the year. So your children's birthdays, your anniversaries, maybe you go somewhere every year for your anniversary. Mark that down so you don't accidentally schedule things to be happening during that time.
Right. Your wife will be pretty mad if, her anniversary present that year is butchering 50 Cornish cross chickens. So you need to keep those things in mind when you're scheduling out your year.
Right. Family vacations, people coming to stay with you, time off of school from the kids. If you guys like to do things with your kids and go away, make sure that you're having that in your calendar so that when you start planning things like raising your meat animals or planting or harvesting, you know that going into it.
So now that we've written down the things that we know will take us away from doing things on the homestead, we can start scheduling what we need to get done on the homestead. So for us, we kind of start at the beginning of the year and work our way toward the end of the year. And we know that one of the first things that we will be doing once we get to springtime is starting Cornish cross chicks for our meat birds. Now we know that Cornish cross take us 8 weeks to raise. So we need to figure out what we have going on at certain times so we know when we should start them. In our case, we know that the entire month of May is dedicated to planting here on the homestead. So we know we do not want our Cornish cross chickens to be ready to be butchered in May.
But we also know that we don't want the chickens to be ready for processing in July or August because they just don't do very well in the heat. Plus, that is when we're going to be doing a lot of our harvesting.
So as of right now, it looks like June is pretty much wide open for us, other than we know the farmer's market is every Saturday. So we'll pick a date in June. I'm going to just pick June 15th. That gives us leeway before and after with still some wiggle room there. And we'll say we'll count back 8 weeks from June 15th. And that's when we know we need to get our chicks to start.
So I'm going to actually mark down in the week of June 15th that we're going to process chickens.
Right.
And then we'll count back 8 weeks to when we'll start the chickens.
Right. Now we always do 50 chickens in the spring. And we process them over 4 days. What we do is we'll process 25 one day. We'll let them chill overnight and we'll bag them and freeze them all the next day, and then we'll process another 25 and then we'll bag and freeze those the following day. So we know we need almost that entire week to take care of chickens.
Okay, we have that in there.
All right, so we know now that we will be ordering our chickens on April 20th, or we'll be getting them on April 20th. So we need to make sure we have them ordered ahead of time so that we get them somewhere in that week of April 20th.
So let's talk about pigs. This year we would like to have our pigs ready to process by October 1st.
Right. Now, part of that is because the processor that we use will be closing down on October 14th and not taking any more pigs. So we want pigs to be as close to ready to October 1st as we possibly can.
Because pigs generally take us about 6 months from the time we get them to the time that they're ready to be processed, that means that around April 1st, we need to be getting our piglets.
Right. Now, typically when we buy pigs, baby pigs, they're about 8 weeks old when we get them. And a pig is ready to process generally around 8 months old. So we know if they're 2 months old when we get them, it's going to take about 6 months after we get them.
Okay, so now let's talk about turkeys. Now we have some heritage turkeys on the homestead and we're hoping that they will provide us with meat this year too, but we really do like the broad-breasted turkeys, so we'll probably raise anywhere from 3 to 5 of them again this coming year.
So now that we know when the pigs will be ready to process, we need to make sure that the turkeys won't be ready about the same time. So, but we do want the turkeys to be ready sometime in October because we want the weather to start cooling off. It's not fun to be processing a lot of these animals in the heat of the summer. And also, prior to that, we're still pretty busy with garden stuff. So we will want the turkeys to be ready more toward the end of October.
Right, so if we're planning to roughly take care of the pigs the 1st of October to give us enough time to do all the processing and freezing and kind of recoup maybe for a day or two.
Right.
Let's plan on the 3rd week of October to process turkeys.
Right, so we'll put a note on October 19th as the day that we are going to process turkeys. They take about 16 weeks to grow out, so we'll count back 4 months from that date.
So we will plan on the 3rd week of June to get turkey poults. So that takes care of the animals that we'll be purchasing to raise for meat. Now, one thing that we forgot to add, and we need to, are the dates that we're expecting some of our animals to give birth.
Right.
Now, that won't affect what we're doing or whether or not we do something, but we do need to be aware of when our animals are going to be giving birth. So we know we have one of our goats that is due to kid on March 20th. So we will put that on our calendar. We know we're going to be breeding our other goats next month, so they will be kidding in June. So I'm going to mark that down when I think that's going to happen.
Now that will be actually the same week that we're getting the turkeys, but it's not like the goats kidding will prevent us from getting the turkeys. We're not blocking that week off. We're just making a note on the calendar that we know that that will be happening on somewhere around that time frame.
And Hope, our milk cow, she is due to calve around September 15th.
So again, that won't prevent us from doing other things, but we do want to have that on the calendar so that we know to be keeping an eye out and know that we need to prepare ahead of time for her to be calving around that time. So now it's on to garden planting and seed starting. Now these can be kind of tricky, but we're going to try to simplify it as much as we can for you guys. For us, it's a little more confusing because we not only grow for ourselves, but we grow for the farmer's market. But today we're going to just talk to you guys about what we do here on our actual homestead. So our last frost date here in southern Missouri is April 15th. But we don't plant on our last frost date. We know that typically it seems like we still get a frost after the official last frost date. So we really don't start putting plants in the ground until May 1st. So we're going to actually use the May 1st date, not the April 15th date when we're figuring out when we want to start our seeds in the house.
So most seeds that you're going to be starting in the house to go out to the garden are going to take about 6 to 8 weeks to get from a tiny seed to big enough to go into the garden. So we'll use that time frame and the May 1st date to figure out when to start our seeds in the house. So that would put us in the middle of March or the beginning of March, depending on the types of seeds that we're starting.
Right. So we'll just mark down a note, the 1st and 2nd week of March, start seeds. Now, as we get closer to that date, we'll sit down and figure out which varieties need to go first based on how slowly or fast they grow. And we'll figure out more of the details. But for now, we're just trying to get an overview for the year.
And like we said, we'll start planting May 1st. And we actually set the entire month of May aside for planting.
Right.
And that might seem like a long time frame, but we plant more than just our garden. We plant our entire summer garden, but we also have a second garden this year that we're going to be planting, half with melons, half with corn.
Right.
I have an herb garden that we're going to be planting, plus all of the flowers that we plant around the homestead.
Right. And not only do we need to account for the time that it actually takes to plant everything, but May is also our rainy season here. So a lot of times we may get almost 2 weeks of rain, or we may get like an entire week of rain, and then we need to wait a week after that because it's so saturated that we can't plant. So we do set aside the entire month of May. Now that doesn't mean that we don't do anything else in the month of May, but it does mean that we don't take up big blocks of time with projects that will take us, away from being able to work on the garden. When there's a good day and we have something to do, the garden needs to be priority for the entire month of May.
So while we have really the basics planned for the entire year, we need to understand that this is really just a plan, and a lot of things can change with weather or things that come up with our family.
Right.
But it gives us an opportunity to now go deeper and plan projects. We've got deadlines of when we need, chicken tractors, if we need new chicken tractors.
Right.
We can tell family if they're wanting to come and visit. These are some open dates that we have to prevent them from wanting to come when we need to butcher chickens or something they may not want to be on the homestead for.
Right. Yeah, and it really just gives us a general overview of hopefully how the year will go. But again, like Sarah said, things are always open for change because, life just gets in the way sometimes. Last summer with our daughter being in a car accident, that threw off a lot of plans, and there's no way we could have sat down at the beginning of the year and known that that was going to happen or even planned for it. So you always have to be willing to make some adjustments along the way, but this is just how we plan out the overview for the year here on the homestead.
So you guys, we hope that this has given you some ideas for planning on your homestead and a little bit more insight into how we do planning. We talk a lot about how we plan together, things that are going to be happening on the homestead. But if you have other ways of planning that are helpful to you and you want to share those with us or the other people who are viewing this video, make sure that you include that in the comment section below.
So if you're enjoying our content, we hope you'll hit that subscribe button before you leave. Don't forget that the absolute best way that you can help us here on the homestead is by sharing our content with all of the people that you think would enjoy it across all of your social media. And until next time, thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.